Okay, so another thing I want to go over quick in this demo video is where to put the tones and the shades. Like we talked about in the sky, a lot of times the sky is darker higher up and gets lighter as it comes down. But for everything else, we want to consider where the sun is at. So let's say this tree is going to be green. So I'm going to get some green here. So I could start with my regular green, and I'm just going to try and fill in right now. Worry about the edges more in a minute. I'll just kind of fill this in. You can work in layers. So sometimes it's okay to paint the whole thing, the regular color or the tint, and then come back and put the regular color or the tint and the shade and the tone all in there. So I'm kind of going to improvise a little bit because I can do that. It's a tree. Trees aren't regular. Okay. So when I'm going to make my green tint, I want to put the tint more towards the sun. Oh, I just realized I kind of missed a part of the tree down here. Better fill this in quick. And before I forget, mark off green on here. Okay, so now I got my tint. This is where the sun is at. So the tint is gonna go on the parts of the tree where you think the sun would be hitting. So the kind of, in this case, kind of the under parts and the parts on the inside here. And then of course, it's gonna have more clumps of leaves and everything in here, so I can add more throughout. But yeah, I definitely want to get that tint on the underside towards where that sun would be hitting it. So always think about the direction of your light source as you're painting. So tints on the side that the light source would be hitting. Okay, and now I can make a shade. So shades kind of on the other side where there would be more shadows, where the sun isn't hitting. Back over here. There could be different shades. You don't have to stick with all one shade. This is pretty dark, so I'm kind of trying to get some texture in here with this darkness. And then I go ahead and make another shade that's not as dark. Not going to be able to make every leaf, but you can make it look like there's texture in there just by kind of scumbling around with your brush, making streaks, making marks. And I just definitely want it to look like it's darker on this side, lighter on this side towards the sun. Okay, so I've used my green shade. Oh, I used the green tint too. Can't forget to mark that off. Okay, and then we're going to talk about tone in a different way, because I could just make another tone of green that would just be a darker green and put it in here. I could easily do that. But another thing I could do, since the tone can be neutral brown, if you mix the right amount of the two colors, I'm going to try that. I'm going to try making a neutral brown and painting my tree trunk with the tone. So I'm going to get some green over here and get some red. Okay, mix these two. It's a little reddish, so I add a little more green. Okay, so now I can kind of paint in these branches. And branches, as they go into a tree, they're gonna kind of show in places and not in others because of the leaves covering them up. And I could go back through with green to make that look a little more natural, cover up the branches in some places. Okay, so that's my green tone. Now, this isn't on the checklist, but I still want this tree to look realistic. So I'm actually gonna take my green tone and mix some white in with it. So I'm kind of making a tint of the tone, but I'm doing that because I want it to be lighter on the side where the sun's hitting it, just like we talked about with the tree, or with the tops of the tree. This is still a tree. But I want to try and make this look naturalistic. Somewhat. Sun might be hitting some branches more than others. Okay. So that just is going to make that tree look a little more rounded and realistic. And since I'm going in here while it's still wet, you'll notice it kind of blends with the brown of the tree trunk, which is good. Okay, so that one I don't have to mark off. So I'm going to continue with this, following my color map, making sure I'm using all the colors in all the different areas. And when I'm working with blue, I'm going to make sure to use a blue tint, a blue shade, and a blue tone. However, that doesn't have to be all in one spot. Let's say I really wanted my sky to be really light blue, and I wanted to make it all a blue tint. I could do that. I just have to make sure I use the blue tone, the blue shade, and the regular blue somewhere else. Maybe I put blue flowers in. Maybe the clouds end up being the blue shade. That's fine too. Systematically, it's easy to think of just putting all of it in one area. But just make sure that you're using your checklist, and as long as you're crossing everything off, you'll make sure that you get all the colors in here. Okay, so obviously I'd continue this, make sure I get all my colors. This is a similar painting that I had started before that's almost done. So you can see how I got red in the barn. I added red shade kind of in there a little bit. I think I brought my red tint over here onto the chicken so it wasn't all on the barn. And my red tone, I think I put here in the chicken a little bit too. I used some, black and white and gray. That's fine, that doesn't count on my checklist, but it definitely helps improve the painting. My blue greens in here, my yellow green hills, which will also be in the grass. Lots of the red-orange colors in the chicken. Tint of the yellow in the sun plus the regular yellow, but the yellow tone and the yellow shade are here in the reflection of the sunlight, kind of on the earth there, whatever that is. Kind of mixed a different color, a sandy color, to make it look like a gravel driveway, a gravel road. So that was probably yellow with a little bit of purple. So it was a tone of yellow, a nice dark tone that I got of yellow in there. With the clouds, you notice I made them a little lighter on the bottom since the sunlight would be shining up and hitting the clouds on the bottom. They'd be darker on top, so I got my tint here, my regular color, my shade on top. Yeah, work from your background forward. Make sure you're using all your colors, checking off your checklist, and keep your paint tray clean, okay? After I'm kind of used most of these colors and I'm about to move on, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna clean out this middle part. If I'm done with this, I'm gonna clean out this well. Keep it cleaned out so that you don't get all your paints mixed together and so it doesn't dry out. So, good luck making your creative color landscape. Hope you enjoy painting.